Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Namaskara, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching or listening, and welcome to this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. My guest this week is Ram. Ram and I actually met in 2016, December, when I had moved here to the United States to pursue my studies. He was actually one of the people who gave me a place to stay along with a few other friends before I could move into the university dorms. So that's how long I've known him, but we actually haven't had a full blown conversation in a while until this one. So the latest conversation that we've had is now up for your viewing and hearing. In this episode, we spoke about a wide range of topics, which include some of his stories of growth through some of his own demons. And we also spoke about the concept of balance and how it can be different for everybody. And Ram shared a very interesting perspective about that. So there's definitely a lot you can take away from this episode of the podcast. So without further ado, I present to you Ram on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Hey Ram, how's it going?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. Pretty good. Glad to be able to have this conversation. I mean, because we haven't had a full blown conversation like this for a while, right? We've only chatted on Instagram. So before we get started, let the people know who you are, what some of your likes are, some of your dislikes, future aspirations, anything and everything you're willing to share.
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Ram. Moved from India to United States approximately 7 years ago. Obviously to better my quality of life. I don't know if that was true, but it is true now. But after a long struggle of trying to find a purpose in terms of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And obviously, being an immigrant doesn't make it easier to find a job and whatnot. But I can happily say that I'm a learning technology specialist at National Louis University now. I live in Chicago. It's very fancy. Uh, I love my job. I love where I live. I live right by the lake, so it's pretty awesome. What do I like? I like food. Duh. um, what else do I like? I am kind of a tech nerd, I guess. So I do kind of like playing with a lot of technological toys. I love nature. I'm a big fan of hiking, camping, and just being out there, which makes me appreciate Chicago more because this is a very nature-esque city, even though it's a massive city. There's a lot of nature here to appreciate, and mostly I just do that like after work or at the weekend. I go hiking and swim in the lake, just hanging out. What I don't like is what do I not like? I don't like traffic.
Hmm.
I don't like crowded places. Uh, I don't like body odor. I don't like overly sweet things, which is
Hmm.
most deserts in the United States. Also, can
And
be
in
a
India, I feel.
little. What else? I don't like anti-vaccinating people. Like, I hope they cared about the community, not just themselves. Um, what else? I think that's a good enough introduction.
Okay. Any future aspirations that you want to share?
I feel like I'm living my future right now. I spent seven
Okay.
years. I'm like, I want to do this, and I didn't know how, and I didn't know what that is I wanted to do. But now I can say that with a lot of pride that I wanted to be in higher ed and work with a lot of students. That's what I wanted to do and help students. So with me being kind of a tech geek and my master's degree in higher ed, I'm kind of like leveraging them to be in this position where I work for this university. and work as a technology specialist, which is so fun because I get to. It's mostly just hanging out with a lot of technological gurus and students. So mostly I'm just like kind of linking from one project to another, and that's my project basically, which is like I'm having so much fun, and I feel very lucky to be in this job, to be in Chicago, and in this house that you guys are looking at. Uh, but yeah, so some more future aspirations. I want to travel. I like cold places. I want to go to Alaska. I want to go to Norway. I want to camp out like on the edge of the fjords in Norway and look onto the northern lights while like the ocean's like in front of me. But what else? I also want to get my doctorate in learning sciences. I want to kind of like
Hmm.
consult and do maybe professor work in the realm of learning because I'm a big nerd about just learning, and I'm constantly finding myself like learning about learning and
Hmm.
thinking about learning. And yeah, that's about it though. So I'm just very curious about our human brain and how it learns, how it unlearns, how it builds patterns, how do we build bad patterns. All of these things are something which is constantly going in my brain. And I like
Mm.
your hoodie right now, which you say seek discomfort. Seeking discomfort is basically how you learn in a way. uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, enough ramble. I'm ready for next question.
Okay. Yeah. So speaking of learning, I mean, for you, for the 7 years that you've been here in the United States, has
Mhm.
it been that learning process to sort of figure out what you want to do, or did you know what you wanted it to do as soon as you sort of stepped foot over here?
I see that as an evolutionary thing, but when I first came here, my goals were not necessarily like what do I want to be, but more about what's what's new in United States and how it's gonna add value to what I want to eventually be, which I didn't know what it was. So more along the lines of I want to just get out of my Indian community, which sounds strange, I know, but I feel like growing up in Bangalore, India, I've just had not so appreciable experience. Like in school, I was like the I'm not necessarily true if it is true, but I was the naughty kid. But that mostly just meant I just wanted to be active, which meant I wanted to be outside playing soccer or cricket or whatever. And that made me a naughty kid because I just didn't want to sit in one place and read a book or something. Uh, but after high school, once I started doing my 11th and 12th grade, it's called PUC in India.
Yeah.
Uh,
In Karnataka. Yeah.
I think I really struggled there. Or right now I can, if I think of it as a hindsight, I can tell that 11th and 12th was like like when your instinct says this is not where you need to be. That's how I felt for the most part.
Mm.
And I think I failed my 12th like four times. I think I'm not even joking. And of the four times that I failed, the two times I actually forgot to pay the exam fee for me to even attend the exam. That's how
Mm.
much I did not care about that. But
Right.
then obviously time keeps moving and you're like the pressure's on to be a somebody. So I kind of like said, F it, let me just power through these exams and like pass, and then I can figure out what I wanted to do. And I did. uh, but then it kind of like triggered like a new thought process, which was mostly about how Indian education system's broken. The brokenness comes from the fact that you're chasing a grade, not necessarily knowledge or learning or to grow as a person. You're just chasing this grade, which not necessarily is helping you learn anything or become a better person.
Right.
And that was just a constant nagging feeling within me, but I just had to go through whatever hoops I had to go through because I was young, I was immature, and I just wanted to have fun. To be honest, I was like, I don't care, whatever. And I was a rebellious kid. Like, I think after my 12th grade I got into, once I started my undergrad in business, I barely went to school. I skipped class all the time. And in the final year, I met like a bunch of people who were into drugs, and I got into drugs too. And I did a bunch of crazy stuff there for like maybe a year and a half. And then I remember I was at this party where everybody was like doing whatever they were doing, and just just in like a split moment, I kind of like had a like whoa moment. I don't even know what to say. Where I was like, okay, this is not where I want to be. Like this is I'm gonna go down a dark path if I was continuing the way I was gonna continue. And I just like up and left. And I remember coming home, and then I was still high as and I just didn't care. I was so determined to like change the way I was living at this point. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like high as shit. I just sat in front of my dad. I don't know how he didn't see through me, but he's maybe he was just naive. But uh, I was like, Dad, I want to change the way I'm living right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to get out of this like weird pattern that I'm building for myself. Like, I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to have this conversation. I don't know what that looks like, the new thing, but this is not what I want to do. Like, just trying to find this lame ass jobs, just hanging out with the wrong crowd kind of way. And that was the end of the conversation. But I think a couple of weeks later, my dad just like randomly mentioned, "Hey, I know this one professor who works for another university." Oh, my dad was a professor, by the way, just so you know. My dad
Okay.
was a professor for a university in Bangalore, and professors know other professors. So
Right.
he knew somebody who was working for a university who that university had an understanding with UCO, obviously,
Mm.
and basically I was like, yeah, let's do it because this is exactly what I wanted, where I just wanted to like have this massive shift towards whatever the generic life that I was living. And here it was. And again, like I didn't know where I was going from the going to, but I know this is
Right.
how I'm gonna start figuring that out. So I think the first couple of years of me being here was just that. Like even I got two masters, right? So the first
Mm.
master's was an MBA, and I graduated that, and then I think like I was so lucky I got a job right a week after graduation. So I think I graduated May 7th, and I had a job by May 15th as
Oh
an
wow.
analyst. So I was like, whoa, yeah, I'm like hitting the ground running, which is great. But as soon I started working there, which was great, like the pay was decent, and I lived in Edmond, so I didn't have to move or anything.
Right.
And everything was fine. I was dating this awesome girl. Like my life was good, but at the same time, feel. I mean, I felt. What am I trying to say? I felt like uh, something was just not right. I felt like a
Mm.
zombie, more like just you get up, go to work, do your thing, come back home. It's like a routine, which don't get me wrong, I love routines because it keeps you like
Right.
focused and disciplined. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, some routines will actually drain you. And that's how I felt.
Right.
I felt drained. And I think a month later off the job, my dad passed away. So it
Mm.
kind of like kickstarted this whole reflection slash mental health weirdness for me. Uh, and then I think that fast forward a year and a half later, I was so frustrated at this job. I'd even broken up with the girl I was seeing at this point, and I was just miserable. So I
Mm.
quit this job thinking, yeah, I need to do something else. Quitting a job as an international is a scary thing because you're kind of like tied
Right.
into your visa status, right? But around the time I was quitting, I kind of had like a massive reflection and a realization saying, thinking about how I wanted to be in terms of my purpose, right? Like, where do I stand in the magical puzzle of life? Uh, I didn't want to be in a capitalistic world. Capitalistic world is
Mm.
building all these fancy softwares or typing code to make more money out of whatever people, which seemed lame to me. So I was like, maybe I don't want to be here. I want to help people figure their shit out mostly. And the fact that I struggled with my education before coming to United States kind of sparked that interest in me to be in higher ed. Like it's
Mm.
fun to be on the other side of the coin to actually help people figure out
Right.
what I figured out, I think. And I feel like a lot of internationals go through that. Like, I don't know what I want to do with this degree yet, but
Mm.
yay, United States, yay, whatever. But after graduation gets real. So
Right.
that's where I feel like I want to help as many people as possible to just like kind of understand themselves. Like that's what happened to me.
Mm.
I learned more about me after my first
Right.
graduation. And then once I learned more about me, I wanted to be in higher ed. So that's why I quit the job, went back to get my second master's degree, which was in higher ed. And in that degree is when I actually for the first time in my life, I felt like I had an education. Like I actually
Mm.
thoroughly enjoyed learning about things, and that's where I was like, okay, learning is the I want to, like
Mm.
become like the guru in learning and how we can make it happen, and
Mm.
kind of bring more awareness to it, which I don't think is necessary. Everybody's talking about it now anyway. But still, just kind of like learning more about it, and yeah, that's it. So since then, I've been like on a constant pursuit of to be here where I am today, which has been a very hard journey for me, to be honest. Like after my second master's graduation, I was very depressed. I was very
Mm.
suicidal. I still remember one day I think I kind of, I hadn't eaten all day and it was like 6 p.m. already. And instead of eating some food, I downed like a half a liter of vodka, I believe, and I passed out in my kitchen. Luckily, my doors weren't locked. So one of my friends who was supposed to meet me, she saw me pass out on the kitchen, and when she woke me up, she thought I was dead. So she had actually called 911, but I was just like out.
Mm.
But she said like, "Dude, what are you doing?" But turns out I had alcohol poisoning. It's not just me being
Mm.
drunk. So it was a whole thing. But anyway, so I feel like I spent the next year and a half kind of like battling with my inner demons and just like the dark side of me. And finally, when COVID hit, it got even worse.
Mm.
I kind of lost all source of income. I didn't have family who could support me. I kind of became homeless. I was like wandering around the United States, figuring stuff out. At one point, even my status was out of. I was out of status too, so I had to go into Mexico in like April of last year, which is like prime pandemic time, and then try
Right.
to come back while trying to figure out everything. But I feel like it made me a stronger person. But
Mm.
it did definitely give me a perspective of how you can channel good things for you in life, if that makes sense.
Right.
But anyway, so a very, very long ramble about how I came to my
Mm.
purpose of,
Mm.
being in the learning realm.
Mm. I mean, because I think based off of what you just said, and a lot of times when we hear people talk about their stories, it's not something that happens in a moment, right? Like, I mean, of course, we have those epiphanies that make us take certain steps, but overall, it takes a while for you to get to where you want to be or get to sort of that moment where you can realize what your purpose is. For you,
They're
it
not.
took you. For you, it took you about 7 odd years.
Yes.
Would you say it took 7 odd years, or would you say it took longer?
Mm, I think 7 years sounds about right. But I think you're totally nailed it when you said like good things will take time for you to come. But I'm just thinking, like, let's say you just started college, right? Yeah, 2 years from now, you can see yourself graduating, but you see it coming.
Right.
But I feel like once you're like out of these protected systems are usually like school and colleges and I don't know, like family maybe. But once you're like out there, everything's vague. Like you don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Like the uncertainty level is so high. So just the fact that you're surviving each day is a big deal at that point, if that makes sense. Like at that point it's not like, okay, I did 10 push-ups yesterday, I'm gonna do 15 tomorrow today. Like that raising the bar, that's not a thing at that point. That's at that point it's like super brutal, where can I survive today, can I eat, can I sleep in a place where there's a thing on top of your head, those are the kind of things you're worried about. And I feel like, I don't know if you watch soccer or some sports, they always say go back to
I do.
basics. I feel like that's
I
what
do. Yeah.
happened to me. I went back to basics of just being like, feed yourself, put a roof over your head, basic. And then figure out, like, wait, sure, I'll work out now, or sure, I'll eat so many calories, or, it's that progression. But yeah, for sure, it takes time for things to happen. Like that's why we spend years and years to do research of anything. So
Right.
you're not wrong for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's that uncertainty that sort of, or uncertainty, however people want to say it, that leads us to those moments of being in a state of depression or anxiety or anything else?
I think so too. Yeah, it's actually, see, everything's uncertain. So it's about what kind of perspective we're going to tackle this uncertainty with. Even now, I don't know what's going to happen
Mhm.
tomorrow.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly. That was going to be my next point. Yeah.
so uncertainty is constant, but however, depression, I think, comes from the fact that we're clouding our mind with the things which will not solve that uncertainty.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, for example, I this is something I constantly work on. I maybe even eventually will do some serious research on. Is I call this priming our brain.
Mm.
Priming our brain is very simple. Actually, it's not very complicated. But the way our brain works is it's exactly like a sponge. You take a sponge, put it in like a dish or something, pour water over it, okay, and then you squeeze the sponge. It's gonna give you water. You pour some rancid like sludge on it and you squeeze it, it'll do that. And our brain's exactly like that. So what I mean by that is when things are uncertain, the best thing for you to do is be productive. And that is a very blanket statement for me to make. But what I really mean is it doesn't matter if you have a goal or not. At least you either think about a goal and set a goal. But if you don't have enough answers for you to have a solid goal, then you choose to be in the moment. That's when you quit thinking the future and the past and you're strictly focusing on the now. Okay. But however, if you do want to think about the future, you want to think about happy thoughts and what you can actually achieve. And it can be anything. Okay. But most of the times, what ends up happening is, at least with young adults, I'm going to say under 25. Because after 25, I feel like physiologically our brain is in a much more mature state to make a little bit more rational decision. But before that, we have a lot of unnecessary information which we're consuming, which goes back to the sponge point now, which is 99% social media. And people talk about pros and cons of social media. For me, as far as I see, I only see cons. Like, I don't think we need such a hyper connected world to live in. You know, uh, I really truly don't think I want to be connected with so many people at the same time. Like, it's devaluing the value of communication. First of all, like too much of something will devalue the value of that, right?
Right. Mm.
So us being able to build quality relationships and actually being able to learn from each other is diminished because we're constantly consuming random TikTok and Instagram. Like who cares? Who cares if this person can dance? Who cares if there's this recipe? You're not gonna make that recipe happen. You know it's not gonna happen, right? What is the chances of you? Let's say you saw this. I know this one platform where I used to see this like so many. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna cook. I think it's called Tasty. I think where they like kind of the camera's like up here and
Oh
they
yeah,
show
it's a
you
channel
the
on YouTube. Yeah.
yeah. So it kind of like it's like a fast way of showing you some recipe. Nobody's doing that. I guess it's not really true. Somebody's doing that, but that's not like most people. So so again, that is again removing the focus that you need to be either in the moment or focus on the future, whatever that it is you
Mm.
want. You're filling your brain with these kind of material which is only like when you squeeze your brain, which is you being able to give back to the world at this point, which is you being
Right.
productive, you have nothing. You'll be like, oh, I saw
Mm.
this video on TikTok of somebody dancing, so I'm gonna do this, you know like
Yeah.
so obviously, it's a very general statement that I've made, but
Hmm.
a lot of people consume a lot of different content. But being conscientious and very deliberate with your content consumption is a very, very essential skill in this day and age,
Right.
I think. And it's not about, sure, it's what you pick is very important as well, but the not the amount of time you spend on the internet is also very important at this point, because in learning, we talk a lot about cognitive overload, the
Mm-hmm.
way our brain works. So you know about short-term memory, long-term memory, right? Short-term memory is, it's actually the wrong terminology. It's called working memory. Working memory is everything that's happening now. So you're listening to
Mm.
me, and my conversation is still processing in your working memory. So it's a little fresh. So maybe a couple of weeks later, you're not going to remember every word I said. You're only going to remember some of it. So the
Right.
way things go from working memory into your long-term memory is a couple of different ways. One is relevancy, like it needs to be relevant to something you care about.
Mm.
So whatever I say, it's something relevant to most conversation you have with your channel and with your your online presence. And also you relate to it on a some level. You relate to it on some level. Like, we both are Indians. We know how it's like to move to a different country and try to adapt. We know how it's like crazy to figure out a purpose which is not like an engineering or a doctor, which is usually like, hey, like mom is going to tell you, okay, you should be an engineer, but deep down you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be an engineer, or you maybe you do, but whatever it is, so you do relate. So that's why some of those things that I do say, that will eventually move into long-term memory, but not all of it in working memory is going to be
Yeah.
there. So our working memory is very sensitive as well. So if you overload it with a bunch of different content, you're not even going to remember something which is relevant to you. So that's the key
Mm.
there. That's the key with internet, is we're like constantly scrolling. And I'm pretty sure, I want you to try this. Like, I want you to just go on Instagram and scroll for like 30 minutes, set a timer and scroll for 30 minutes, okay? And just, I want you to actually consume content. And I bet you in like approximately 6 minutes, your brain will check out. And you're
Yeah.
mindlessly doing it at this point. You don't even care what's happening. Like somebody will be like, "Hey, I will give you $100," and you'll be like, "Ah, whatever," and you just keep going. So that's how working memory works. Like he'll be like, okay, you overloaded me now, like I can't even process. You're as good as a
Mm.
zombie, so I'm really coming from like a scientific and an educational purpose
Yeah.
here of our functioning of our brain.
Yeah.
And and I feel like that's important, and that's something I always try to convey to younger adults, because it's easy to get swayed with fancy things, like whatever, like the lifestyle these Instagrammers said is hella fake. You don't know what's
Mm.
happening behind the camera.
Right.
You're only seeing that 10 seconds of crap that they put out. So uh so yeah, like taking a step back and focusing on what matters is very, very important. It's hard. It's very hard, because it's like we live in 21st century where we don't have to scavenge for food and shelter anymore. we're
Mm.
not we're not nomads anymore. We're like highly ultra evolutionary species,
Right.
and our needs are much different than which was like 20, 30 years ago. So uh, from that perspective, I think we need to kind of check ourselves a little more differently, and kind of
Mm.
keep ourselves accountable, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, that definitely does. That definitely does. The other thought I had when you said that we lose focus with social media, do you think the other thing is also that it's just a warped sense of reality
It is a
that
warped
sort
sense of
of,
reality. It's like um, it's how do I say? Like, imagine you're facing Grand Canyon now, okay?
mm,
But there's a wall in between you and the Grand
yeah,
Canyon, and there's only like this small pinprick of a hole that you can see Grand Canyon from, and you're looking at it, and you can see maybe like 100th quarter of a Grand Canyon, and that's what in, like, social media is. You're not
mm,
really seeing the entire Grand Canyon. But that's, I feel like, a bad analogy as well. But this is, when I say Grand Canyon, I'm talking about people's lives. You
yeah,
know, we're taking away the humanity of humans through social media.
mm,
We are only showcasing the cool things that you do. It's like a party trick. When you go to a
right.
party, this one guy can do some card trick. That's how social media. It's like you want to go on social media to look at other party tricks. That's what it is. You know.
Mm.
but in reality everybody's struggling something. It's either their inner demon, their relationship with their parents, with their significant others, their jobs, their purpose, with drugs, addictions. Like something's happening all the time, and nobody
Yeah.
wants to like talk about that. Which brings me to the point that a lot of us, whatever I'm talking about, is eventually kind of bleeds down to us acknowledging humans to be humans, which is
Hmm.
we are all imperfect people,
Right.
and embracing the imperfection is a little bit more of a value than striving to be this perfectionist of whatever. I
Mm.
can do 100 push-ups versus, hey, I did one push-up more than yesterday was zero, today was one. So we need to celebrate that as opposed
Mm.
to somebody being able to do 101.
Mm.
But also not taking away from the fact that whatever dude did do 100 push-ups, mad respect for him for putting in the work.
Right.
But that does we're not comparing here. Everybody's win looks differently. uh,
Mm.
and I'm sure everybody talks about this already, but living it is hard. Like talking about, yeah, like don't compare yourself, like you do you and all of that stuff. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do.
Mm.
And not only that, when you say you do you, like I don't think you do you applies to people who are mean and dickheads. Like, oh, I'm not gonna wear a
Yeah.
mask. Fuck you. No, don't you. That person shouldn't do you do you. That person needs to get a kick in the ass and start wearing a mask. And it's not even for themselves. Like they can die if they want to, but it's for others around them. We live
Mm.
in a society, and there's other people outside of us, and we need to also watch out for them. I
Mm.
feel like that's the big point, which is a crazy thing of anti-mask people or anti-vax people. um,
Mm.
but should I feel like I lost my train of thought?
No, no, I think we were
The
talking
you do
about
you
like
part,
the
the you do you part,
yeah.
right? Yeah, like if you're a genuinely nice authentic person, you do you is super applicable. But if you're like a idiot who's only hell-bent on manipulating others for personal gain, don't, no, that person shouldn't do you. You need therapy, and
Mm.
you need to fix your shit.
Fair. Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
yeah, and I think people recognizing their own imperfection and owning it and working towards making themselves better, I think they are the real successful people of the world. Not
Mm.
Jeff Bezos. He doesn't pay his taxes and shit.
I mean, I don't know anything about that, but I had this other thought that sort of pop up while you were talking about the perfect things that people tend to show on social media. Do you
Yeah.
think that, I don't know if you've thought about this or not, but do you think that that's a product of the capitalistic or opportunistic sort of society where we're sort of told to always make a good first impression, and people are sort of hell bent on making that good first impression, that they're only sharing the good things about their life and not necessarily the negatives, the imperfections, or the bad? It's just a random thought, but I thought I'd ask you, what do you think about that?
No, I think it's fair. Uh, and I think not only is it fair, I think it's expected because, like, when you want to be in a position of spotlight, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to bore your audience. You obviously want to charm your audience.
Right.
And everybody wants to be in some kind of spotlight. Yeah, capitalistic world has definitely pushed us to that weirdness of how can I make value. When I say value, it doesn't necessarily monetary value. It can be in so many different ways. Uh, so technology obviously has created this weird like omnipresence of our our situation, right? Like you can view
Right.
your content anywhere around the world, but it's it's definitely capitalistic, but more importantly, I think it's coming from a place of lack of self-reflection.
Mm.
uh, like you're just doing it, like most of the social media cloud comes from like a trend. It's a trend,
Yeah.
like the ice bucket challenge or whatever it is, like the YOLO swag, whatever those terminologies came up with, and it had a trend and it'll die down eventually. So it's something like that. you know, and everybody wants to get in on this action. And obviously, it's fun and games. Like if I had a channel with like thousands of people who are watching me, I think it would be fun. Like it's just we're like on a very granular level. I think every human is a sucker for attention.
Oh
We're
yeah.
just suckers for attention. Like you can be an introvert, but like some kind of it can be a some different kind of attention. But if you get that affection, you're like jumping inside.
Yeah.
So, but however, it's a fleeting moment. It's only gonna
Yeah.
last you for so long. It's like taking a hit of cocaine, as good as that,
Hmm.
uh, and it's gonna be gone, and then you're gonna be left with that craving of constantly doing it, which is what I mean by lack of self-reflection or critical thinking. Like it's not sustainable. You any goals, any projects you're gonna do, make sure it's sustainable. Like when I say sustainable, if you be productive and work towards your project, and whatever value you get out of it, you should be able to do the same thing again tomorrow, build on it, obviously not repeat it,
Yeah.
and still be able to derive value out of it. I'm not saying all content creators are like on this narcissistic spectrum. I think there's legitimately good content creators. I have
Yeah.
really mad respect for people who actually like Nat Geo or Discovery kind of people or History Channel. And there's so many out there who are actually putting out good content, like educational content. Oh, this is good to know. Like, why do vaccines work? Why do vaccines don't work? Or how does a monitor work? How does a processor work? How do cars work? It can be anything. And it can be also things like I remember talking to you about social constructivism, right? Like
Yeah.
like even what you are doing is pretty good. But again, it comes down to the fact that like there's so many things that you can consume. You have to only pick so much and kind of condense
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And I only say that because really, I'll be honest with you, Pratik. Like consuming content is great. It's like a thought-provoking channel that you have, but I can't keep consuming it like on a regular basis. I will get bored. I'm like, enough
Yeah.
of this deep dive thing. So maybe once a week, I'm just gonna go through your stuff and I'll maybe watch one video. I'm like, okay, that's a good thing, and it'll kind of give me ideas of how I can think about different things.
Right.
So that's something we can do, but I don't know if I mean I don't know if everybody is able to do that because
Hmm.
as a student, I feel like we have a lot of time, which we call downtime, which we
Hmm.
end up where we're like mindlessly scrolling or doing something.
Right.
But I wish there was just more that we could do. I just miss when I was a child and we didn't have phones. I remember like just
Yeah.
running around on the streets with no shoes. And I've started doing that in Chicago now. So I live by the beach and there's like a beautiful trail here. So I take my shoes
Yeah.
off and I just walk with no shoes on just to feel like how the earth feels like again. And there's like so much grass here and it's the most amazing thing. And I'm like, it's pretty cold here. Chicago's cold. And it's pretty hot there, I'm assuming. It's like 10 degrees today here, centigrade, by the way. Uh, so even then, I'm like, I take my shoes off. It's just like a thrill for me, you know. So, which eventually brings me down to the point that small things really matter,
Yeah.
and social media and all that are the kind of things which don't matter. They just don't
Right.
matter. Like it's never gonna add value to you. It's never gonna develop your personality or your character or your knowledge base. It's just empty value. It's empty value. It's gonna just take more cognitive space from your brain,
Hmm.
adding nothing. you know uh, so yeah, you're 100% right. It's a capitalistic weirdness that it is. But that also comes from privilege, honestly. uh, it's I call it privilege drunk. Like
Hmm.
your parents or whoever kind of like pays for you through college, and they're kind of like compensating for the struggles that you go through by constantly building up these convenience of being able to achieve things, which is good, but at the same time it's not good you know like especially when you're at school. I think the people shouldn't take away the challenge which comes with being in school.
Yeah.
I think it should exist. I think that is part of being in school. And when I say challenge, sometimes I mean budgeting issues. Like sometimes you overspend your money. Sure, you have to suffer now. Just starve yourself for that 2 days just so you can be okay for the next whatever, right? Or some fight with a friend or somebody bullied you, whatever. Even though it's okay, I feel like I'm like a bad person here. Not that I'm encouraging these things, but if it does happen, it's a moment for whoever is facing that adversity to learn from it. And adversity
Right.
gives you more value than going straight to being a winner. And winners, it gets losing and building on your failure is much more valuable than just constantly winning. So that's the
Mm.
whole privilege conversation I'm having. So when you're in like this privileged drunk state, you're constantly used to getting what you want, which builds entitlement.
Yeah.
Once you have this entitlement, you have nothing to look forward to because you already have everything. And you only
Right.
want more materialistic things, and you only want things which have no value. You just want it for
Mm.
the fun of it because you really don't know what the value of certain things are. Uh, so yeah, it's like a weird, strange feedback loop which keeps happening until
Right.
adversity breaks that pattern. Yeah.
Right. Based off of everything you said, from the content that we watch to privilege to not being able to constantly, let's say, for example, watch whatever I put out or watch anybody else puts out, it takes me back to the word of balance. Because, and I understand that too, like based off of what you just said, like it's not possible for somebody to sit down 24/7, 365 days to just consume the same thing, because you are eventually going to get tired of consuming the same thing over and over again. So it, like, the main word that came into my mind when you were just mentioning that and everything in general was the word balance, is that we need to be able to strike a balance to do anything. Like, okay, sure, you want to watch this, fine, but then also like give yourself a break, or do something different. I think all of those things also sort of play a role. What are your thoughts on that, and balance, and thoughts on balance in general, or just switching things up? Yeah.
I, don't- I actually don't necessarily agree with balance. I think balance is
Okay.
a facade in a way.
Okay.
Uh, at least, okay, let me define what balance is. I think balance is relative. First of all, everybody's balance is different.
Oh yeah,
So
of course, yes.
you're probably saying, okay, let's just for the sake of this conversation, the balance would be if I consume something for 30 minutes, I need to be able to have a me time for 30 minutes, right? That would be a balance, correct? But why I said I don't necessarily agree is if you want to be successful, which again is a very relative thing, I'm going to tie success with you earn enough money to pay your bills and buy enough food and maybe just enough to maybe buy yourself clothes or shoes or whatever fancy you want. Okay. That's the baseline, and then it'll only keep going up. Like you can be hella rich or whatever. And then another variable we can use is you being able to work in your dream job and just having a good growth pattern there. And the third thing is you're happy. You're happy with whatever it is. Okay. So I'm going to take these three things as a measure of success. Okay. So let's say you want to be successful, right? The way the workforce and the way the world has kind of shifted now is you have to be expert in a niche. You can't be an expert like in a whole domain. You have to be expert in a niche. So for that niche to happen, you have to not have balance, if that makes sense. Like if you want to have a niche in like one specific aspect, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to develop that niche within you first. So when that is happening, you're probably spending like 10 hours a day doing that, and you're only
Yeah.
sleeping for 8 hours. So that's not balance. Does that make sense? So you're taking
Okay, I
one
see what
step.
you're saying.
So you are supposed to take one step back, two steps forward to make
Right.
progress happen. So there's no balance. So if you whatever you want in your life, you're gonna make more effort than whatever is not valuable. So that's the
Mm.
mindset you want to keep. What's gonna make me a better, productive, healthy, happy person? You're gonna shift the weight towards that or say,
Right.
and reduce the weight towards that. So that's the imbalance. You're striving for imbalance towards the healthy thing.
Hmm.
That's why I don't agree with the balance. Balance is you're like average of both good and bad, which
Hmm.
never. I mean, I see where you're coming from. It's like the yin yang thing, right? But it's not possible. Something has to win. Either the dark side or the white side has to win, and you're striving
Fair
for
point.
something or the other.
No, no,
And
definitely, definitely. Yeah.
you need the dark side to know the value of the light side, because if you
Mm-hmm.
just had the light side you'd be like, okay, there's nothing for me to do, like just chill and die until old age takes over, you know. So dark side is giving you fuel, or it's giving you something, some pattern to break. That's how I see it as patterns. You either have a good
Yeah.
pattern or you have a bad pattern. If one of
Right.
your patterns is you get up in the morning and you don't brush, you go straight to eating, that's a bad pattern. I hope you recognize that and you start breaking that and just brush your teeth, you know? So again, there's no there's no balance there.
Hmm.
So, you know, you're obviously constantly trying to shift weight or your energy's bandwidth towards what's gonna be healthy, productive, yada yada, you know. And obviously
Mm-hmm.
I get the fact that there's self-love and relaxing on that, but for me even the relaxing part is shifting towards the healthy pattern,
Right.
you know. So if you told me like you have to balance my social media consumption with something else, I'd be like, okay, so I can spend 10 minutes on my phone and 10 minutes doing something else. So I can maybe even game the system. I can be like, okay, I spend like an hour doing something productive, I'm going to spend an hour on social media, you know. Like I don't think it should be like that transactional, you know what I mean.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it can be more like, let me do 2 hours of productive work and maybe like 2 minutes of social media consumption. Like that's how the imbalance should be. And which brings me to a really interesting point that this last 3 years I've seen some really dark. When I say dark shit, I've I've hit rock bottom. Like I told you
Right.
already, I was homeless, and while I was homeless, I had to cross into Mexico and come back. That was the most scariest thing I've ever done. So I feel like delayed gratification is something which we also need to normalize. Like,
Yeah.
if, you know, which again stems from the fact that you spend a solid 2 hours doing like hard work and 5 minutes of your reward, and keep it that way, because even that 5 minute will feel like you just had the most beautiful time,
Hmm.
you know, and that's what will make you happy. I promise you. If you're focusing on a goal to be happy, in a weird way, it won't come. Strive to
Yeah.
be just productive and being in the moment and how you can add value, then everything else will come, if that makes sense. I actually give people an analogy by saying, like, imagine you're walking a dog and he's on a leash, and you just like tug on his leash to go in one specific direction. There's a good chance he will resist. He'll be like, no, like,
Yeah.
stop pulling me in this direction. I want to go sniff that piece of grass right there. So you kind of like go with the dog while kind of like slowly nudging it, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, I also feel like it's a bad analogy, but take it out of it when you're editing it.
No, no, no. It's okay. It's okay. No, it's a decent analogy. Like, because I get what you're saying about the balance concept. Because I totally agree with what you said that it's not actually a balance. Because sure, you're spending a whole year creating something, right? And then you create it after that year. Just this is just an example.
Yeah,
You create something created for a year, and you've finally done it at the end of the year. But now you feel the need to switch off. You're not necessarily going to go and switch off for a whole year, right? You're only going
exactly,
to go switch off for like 5 days or 10 days, and then you're going to
exactly,
come back and get right at it again.
exactly. So
So
there is the
I
balance
get where
there.
you're coming from in terms of that sense of balance. Would it be would framing it to say that you need a bit of both
No,
be a
they
better way
both.
of looking at it?
Yes, that is the most accurate thing. Like there cannot be only one existence. There has to be an
Right.
opposite of something, you know. So without the opposite of whatever it is, like it's there's no point. And it's actually down to scientific. Like this is literally science, actually. Not even kidding. So I'm sure you know what matter is. They
Right.
figured out antimatter now. So for every matter to exist, there needs to be an existence of antimatter, and they
Right.
actually are saying this is how the world was formed. A particle of matter and antimatter, they collided with each other and they exploded. And that was like the concept of Big Bang. And they say the characteristics of an antimatter is that for every, let's give it a random unit, okay, 100 of something, 100 something of antimatter and 100 something of matter, when they come together, it basically, the antimatter kills everything itself and the
Mm.
matter except 0.0001 of something, which
Yeah.
comes from the creation. Basically they're like mating, I guess, which
Mm.
explains everything. Like it's the pattern of everything if you think about it. Like men and women, they have sex, there's so many sperms but only one fertilizes it, so that like it's, there's so many of each of it, but there's only small percentage of something creating a new thing, you know what I mean? So it's like a constant battle of probability,
Mm.
and if you can figure this probability out of how to be successful, and I think you can, that's how you can do it. And it's actually not very hard, I don't think. It's very, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not necessarily a religious person. And I feel like everything around us is just energy. And we're constantly doing transaction with different kinds of energy. And the most easy energies that you do transact with is heat, cold, electricity, yada yada, right? And people talk about vibing with people too. That is you finding a medium to transact with each other, your energies.
Right.
And there's, I also think there's much greater energies than us with each other, heat, cold, whatever.
Oh yeah, of course.
I don't know what that is. I'm not gonna say it's God. I'm just gonna say the universe or the nature, right? And if you deliberately, consciously, with integrity, seek your goals, your happiness, and just like love, honesty, all the good things, I think you will get it. You just need to be patient and continue to have that conversation with the outside energy, and you just want to say, hey, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, how can I do that, and that again goes back to you priming your brain. If you're constantly pushing your brain to be, I don't know, me saying I'm happy is very blanket statement, but more along the lines of I want love, let's say that, that's more easier, okay? Like I want love. Love can come in anyway. It can be your neighbor's kid coming and hugging you. It can be your American foster family giving you a place to stay and just giving you all of the love. You just getting some good food can be love. A girlfriend, a wife, brother, sister, mom, dad, friends, best friend, your professor, mentor. So many ways of giving love. So if you are at least if at that moment, if the goal is to be like, I just want love, universe, I want love, and you constantly keep, you know keeping that idea in your brain, and you're just kind of like making, kind of trying to manifest it, I think you'll eventually get it, and I fully believe that. And I think this transaction is what we call praying or talking to God, in most religious settings. I think it's powerful to build like communities and stuff.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because I think um, it sort of definitely helps putting it out there, but also knowing that you have to work towards it. Because it's not going to happen just if you think about it. It's not
That
like,
is very
oh, you
true.
think about it, here it is.
That
It's
is
not going to
very
happen
true.
that way.
But that's the thing, right? Like if you're thinking about it, you're kind of working towards it, right? Like let's say you're gonna get
Yes,
up
I
in the
agree.
morning, you're gonna think about brushing your teeth. So it's gonna happen. I mean, most healthy individuals, I think, will make it happen. But I can understand when if you have like a mental health issue or depression, that could be something which is hard. Like I want to break this pattern of mind numbing lack of desire, whatever that is, and be somebody, and it just doesn't happen. I get that. There's some different ways to tackle that, but just generally, I think just the fact that you're kind of like keeping that on your front screen of your brain, I think you'll eventually make it happen as an action as well. If you're not, then you need to figure it out.
Right. No, because after all, the thought is at the genesis of it all, right? Because if you're not going
Exactly.
to think about it, then you're not going to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So no, definitely, I definitely agree with you over there. Um, you said something about or going, but I don't know why, because this thought just popped up in my head again. We spoke about balance and how you don't agree with the concept of balance,
Okay.
And but then when we broke it down a little further, we both sort of agreed with what we were sort of talking about, in the sense that it's not necessarily a perfect balance, but then you need a bit of both.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, do you think, funny I say the word perspective, do you think that it's just a matter of perspective in terms of how we look at things, or is it just one thing is right or one thing is wrong?
No, I think it's just perspective, which is the beauty of it. Which makes me the favorite feature of humans, our different perspectives, right?
Yeah,
It just makes me happy too, and that's like one of my big reasons of the goals that I did set for myself was I didn't move from India to here to meet only Indians, because a lot of the international students move here and they're only within their own groups, like within their cliques, and they
totally,
never go
totally.
out of their way to kind of like learn more about other cultures. And I am blessed to think the way I think, and I feel like I'm one of the lucky persons to have such a really open mind, and like like we say in Hindi, hatke. Like I feel like I'm that person. Like I just the norm is boring for me. I want to think which is not the norm. You know, so which brings me to the point that I'm like very blessed to say, and I'm kind of proud to say that too. Like if I like listed my friends, everybody would be from different nationalities, and I can make a resume, and I would love to do it. Like, hey, I have friend from Finland, what's up with you? It's
Yeah.
just obviously I'm being a little honorary, but uh, but I kind of take pride in that though, like the fact that I have friends from so many different places, and perspectives is just mesmerizing, and there's just endless possibilities to learn. Just
Yeah.
different cultures, and most cultures are beautiful. There's just this. It's like it kind of gives you a bird's eye view of how people created civilization depending on what they were exposed to,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very beautiful in its own way. Like like Asian culture, right? Like when I say Asian, obviously we're Asians too, but what I mean is like Japanese or Korean. Like depending on the kind of uh geography and the food which is available to them, they're masters of seafood. Like sushi, oh yeah. Right? Like that's the thing there. Like United
Yeah.
States, like here's steaks, big thing here. Like good steaks you want to eat here. Obviously I'm kind of biased towards food because I'm also hungry. But but moving away from the food aspect, the culture wise, right? Like Japan is known for their engineering as well. Like not just Germany, Japan's known for their engineering and their precision in a lot of the good things. They're also known for like being on time and being hella workaholic.
Yeah.
Uh, and us Indians, we're known for like being mathematically kind of geniuses that way, even though I don't like it. We're almost everybody who I meet from India is an engineer, whether they like it or not.
Mm.
I think that itself is a weird cultural thing, but at the same time, it's a big deal to just be like, I'm 10th grade now, but I want to be an engineer. To say that, it takes big balls, I think. And then
Yeah.
even here in the United States, like I met so many cool people who want to do so many different things. Like I met this one girl who went to, I don't know if went to Africa or Haiti or somewhere, that she wanted to build house for poor people. I met some doctors who wanted to do this, Doctors Without Borders. Like they basically go to like underprivileged countries and they're just giving people treatment and all of those things. So like it just is so beautiful that the power of human is so strong. But again, we need to have both sides, which is the
Yeah.
bad side of humans too. But I feel like again there's an imbalance there of the good versus the bad again. With I don't know, from the top of my head, I can think of the whole Israel bombing Palestine,
Yeah.
India handling COVID like so badly, and our leadership doing nothing there. And then I don't know, I can just keep going on and on. But again, if you really think about it from the perspective of balance, the stark imbalance which news or media shows is they know only bad news gets them clout. If they
Oh
start
yeah.
talking about,
100%.
oh, this look at these kids graduated 4.0 magna cum laude, like who cares? Like, oh, another kid who got a school. That's not news.
Yeah.
So again, it's what you expose yourself to and what kind of imbalance you strive for. Don't
Right.
strive for balance. You'll never gain balance. Strive for
Mm.
imbalance, but pick the imbalance which will actually help you. Stop looking at news, stop looking at social media. At least don't stop the
Mm.
social media, like limit it to maybe like 20-30 minutes a day, and
Mm.
listen
Be
to
smart
music.
about your consumption after all.
Yeah, like it's not hard. It's not hard. It's just self-control.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I
Mm.
every time I feel like I want to like click on social media, I actually don't have any social media outside of Instagram just because some people want to chat with me. And whatever pictures you do see, I didn't put them up. My friends took my phone and were like, okay, this is a good picture. Let's put it up. So for the most part, I don't care what happens on Instagram. And I never open it other than, chatting with two or three friends of mine or whatever. But let's say I do feel like I want to crave this mindless scrolling. I usually switch it to a music or taking a walk,
Mm.
or if I can't do either, I just start doing yoga.
Mm.
uh, or I don't know.
How stereotypical. I'm just kidding.
I know, right? It is so stereotypical. But y- I mean, yoga has been like super nice for me. One of the goals
Yeah.
I did set for myself was to just be super flexible. And I can say that with a lot of pride that I am very flexible as of today. I can
Yeah.
touch my head to my knee with ease when I like reach to my toes. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's like you have to sacrifice the instant gratification for delayed gratification. That's the constant struggle in you. And
Yeah.
social media is always instant gratification, and instant gratification is
Right.
it's not good.
Right.
It's not
Right.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Definitely. No, I
always
mean,
delayed.
and
That's why you
oh,
get
go
paid
ahead.
once or twice a month, not like every day. That's why you get paid once or twice a month. Like it's the delayed gratification. You're gonna work hard for 2 weeks, and then maybe you'll get paid a little bit. So keep that same motto and keep churning it. Work hard for like a year from now. Don't work hard for now or tomorrow.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, I agree. And this is probably going to take a weird tangent, but you mentioned earlier about how there's a lot of students that come here and sort of stay within their own circles,
Yeah.
um, which is why
How
I
do we
call it a
tackle
tangent.
that?
So that was going to be my question. Like, why do you think why do you think that we go about that sort of nature of just being around our own people?
It's what says on your shirt, seeking discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Moving to a new country and getting exposed to this new place, is the boundary of seeking discomfort for these kids. That's it. The line is right there for them. For the line for me is even more farther. Like, sure, I came here. Sure, I am like hanging out with whatever, but I want to go more. And but also, I don't know if it's probably just me. I just as soon as I start getting comfortable with anything, I know it's not good news. Just there's like a automatic panic button which goes off in me, where it says, "Okay, you're not adding value anymore." You know, growing takes pain. How do I know? Try doing 10 push-ups. You'll be hurt
Right.
for like 2 days. So if you want to get strong and move forward, it's gonna be painful, regardless of you want it or not. So yeah, I at any given moment of time there has to be. I mean, I'm not saying pain, but some kind of discomfort that you have to go through and get comfortable with the discomfort. You'll be the happiest person ever.
Right.
I think the only trick to happiness is being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you'll never be uncomfortable. I mean, in a way, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and just go with it. Just go with it, and you'll add value, so much value.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
value is not just making money. It's you
Yeah.
growing as a person, maybe building a
Mm.
relationship, yada yada.
Yeah.
being a stand-up citizen.
Yeah. Yeah, because and I mean, this is not like a way for us to throw shade at anybody who is sort of just being within their circles, but it's also about sort of realizing that there's a lot more to explore outside, and by keeping an
Yeah,
open mind
yeah,
and
no,
sort
for
of
sure.
being around different people.
I mean, I'm obviously not throwing shade for people who are just staying in their
Yeah,
own circles. I mean, who am I? Like, again,
yeah,
you do you, whatever, you know. Uh, but there's a good chance I might not hang out with the people who are just in their own cliques, you know.
right,
And obviously, whatever you're seeking, in a way, it's seeking you as well.
right,
So the chance, like, if I want to meet people from different backgrounds and kind of like learn from them, there's a good chance the other person I meet also thinks the same way,
yeah,
you know. So most people who I am friends with, they also cherish the fact that they can meet people from so many different backgrounds and cultural,
right,
backgrounds. So it's a thing again, that there's that pattern again. So obviously the clicks are going
yeah,
to be in the clicks, and people who are going to be like a free bird will be free birds, and they'll only meet free birds.
right.
Yeah.
No, totally,
But
totally. Because I
I
mean,
do wish people, I mean, I'm not saying just abandon your inner group click thing and just be like, if you guys, I'm going to just be a free bird. I'm not saying that, but I think people should take more opportunities to kind of like get uncomfortable,
yeah,
know other people. Like, this is another thing. Sure, you're going to have massive degrees. You can maybe build 3D printer by your hand, whatever. You can have all those skills. But if you can't network, you will never be successful.
yeah,
I think this should be taught in college, how to build relationships. Oh, wait. How to build healthy relationships with peers, mentors, parents, significant others, all of that.
yeah,
Yeah. So, which requires you to be lot uncomfortable and lot empathetic
yeah.
of, just understand, coming from a, just being able to see the world from other person's perspective and like kind of getting along.
Totally, because I mean, we met through Indians, so it's not like we're against Indians
Oh
in any way,
no.
because we met each other because of a couple of other
Yeah.
people, like a mutual friend.
Yeah.
So, but it's just that, yeah, sort of being open uh, to
Yeah.
others and other things that are to be
If
offered
I,
by the world. Go ahead.
which kind of makes me, I mean, not makes me, I realize something now, that if I hadn't made, like, if I hadn't gone out of my way to make the friends that I have, I probably wouldn't have been alive today, to be honest. Like, I have had people who have actually saved my life in like really dark times, and they were not
Right.
anywhere close to being Indian or part of my community. Because I get the point where people are in cliques is like, oh, I need somebody to watch my back and I want to have friends, and the easiest way to do that is to meet my own people.
Yeah.
But I think that's a, not to throw shade or anything, but it's a very short term, short sighted of that person to do that.
Yeah.
Because everybody, let's say, for as an example, right? If you're only hanging out with Indian people, there's a good chance, though all of those relationship are have no solid foundation, because as soon as you graduate, there's a good chance everybody's going to go different ways and you'll not have
Yeah.
like whatever, uh, but let's say you did make, go out of your way to make friends, I don't know, locally or wherever. I feel like that would be a little bit more valuable, because you actually were uncomfortable and it took struggle to build value towards that relationship, so you will actually care more,
Yeah.
as opposed to with just, oh, you're from India, oh cool, like let's go eat biryani together. That came easy. That came easy, and I don't think, I mean, I can see it, but I also, for the most part, I am gonna lean towards, it's not gonna be a long-lasting relationship,
Right.
or maybe I'm not. That's not really true. I don't think. Maybe there's a possibility. Maybe people who are like not very demanding are like, okay, this is okay for me. Let's just be friends forever. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe part of it also goes back to those vibes, as you mentioned earlier, the energies that we
Yeah,
share with people. in the
Yeah,
sense that irrespective of who you are or where you're from, if you connect and you sort of keep it going. But if you don't, and if it's just transactional, then
yeah,
eventually the transaction is going to end.
yeah.
So
Eventually,
yeah,
exactly.
definitely. Yeah. And speaking of like being around people from different cultures, if you're willing to share, what were some lessons that you learned from them, from being around
Uh,
people from all over the
this
world?
is my favorite story to actually share. Growing up, before I came here, even the first year of me being here, I was a dick. I was like the most kid you'll ever meet. Like I was just such a. Wait, can I cuss on your thing?
I mean, it's okay. We've done it already. I'll bleep it. It's fine.
But
No big deal.
uh, like I said, I was such a kid, like just constantly getting in, not necessarily getting in trouble, but I was a very selfish person. I was just, I would manipulate people into making things go my way. Like let's say we're sitting in a car, I'd make sure somehow my music choice was played or something like that, Like it can be petty, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like whatever. Like, but and even if people would be uncomfortable with that, I just didn't care. I'm like, just suffer. I don't care. Like I am having a
Mm.
good time. But I think moving here has like kind of broken that win in me. Like I want to be the opposite person. I want to compromise to make sure people I care about are happy and comfortable. People I care about is very important here, which is maybe like three people, four people in my life, you know. And that's also a thing. Like, sure, building relationship is very important for me, but at the same time, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Sure, I have friends who are like in Finland or Germany, but us being able to like share an experience at this point is very limited, obviously, because they're doing their own thing and I'm doing my own thing. And so obviously that four people are people who are most often around me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Uh, so the biggest lesson for me was to be kind to myself and to others. Kindness, compassionate, honesty, integrity is all of these things which I like big time in Oklahoma actually, which is very surprising because Oklahoma gets such a bad rep, but I think
Yeah.
Oklahoma is like a really stand-up place at least. Like at least Oklahoma City, Edmond, Tulsa area is good. I don't know about the rest of the area, uh, but I met like really amazing people who like kind of really shown me that there's no need to be an edgy badass kid or whatever I was.
Yeah.
Uh, it's okay to be calm, kind, take it slow, give love, receive love. And one other lesson I have learned is for you to receive whatever that you want to receive, be it love, trust, honesty, you have to do that first and put yourself out there. It's just like investing in a stock market. You're gonna put your money, wait for it to go up or go bust. So you're gonna put love out there and be vulnerable, like here's my heart, somebody come take it, whatever. uh, and you just have to expect that person treats it the way you want it to be treated. And if not, you have to be
Yeah.
okay with it. You have to be okay with them even stepping on your heart. And when it hurts, don't be like, okay, I'm gonna just be numb. No, feel the pain, feel the heat, but still go through with it, and you're still gonna come out the most awesome person. Being authentic even in hard times is hard. When you're sad, when you're like down on your luck, you still need to be authentic, and you still need to kind of like go through that motion. It'll make you strong. It'll give you value of being happy.
Yeah.
That's why I constantly keep saying I feel so lucky, Pratik. So speaking of lucky, right? Remember I told you about the matter, antimatter, they kind of consume each other,
Yeah.
and such a small, minuscule percentage stays alive.
Hmm.
Even in that small percentage, there's actually more matter and antimatter which exists, and the chain
Yeah.
keeps on going. They consume each other, and there's something new, and then something consumes in it. So imagine from the time Big Bang happened up until now, how many times antimatter and matter consume, like destroy each other, and we still exist. And like imagine the probability, the rarity of that. Like I can maybe add trillions of zeros after the decimal point and then add one maybe. And that's how lucky we are to live this life in 21st century, where we're not living in poverty, we're not living under kings and queens where we could be killed over like nothing. We're living in mostly a democratic world.
Yeah.
We eat whatever we want for the most time. We play with all of these technology for the most part. We have such amazing nature that supports us. What else can you ask for? And which
Yeah.
again kind of makes me think about um, people who are also unhappy feel like they always constantly want something more than they already have. So I think that's also a very good perspective to have is critically think of things you already have and start cherishing
Hmm.
those as opposed to wanting something which is not which you have, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know, being grateful is a very powerful thing, and really meaning it is even more powerful. Not just saying thank you for the sake of being thank you. Being actually truly grateful is a very powerful thing, and a lot of good things will happen to you. Being grateful and seeking what you want to seek, and the universe will come and make it happen.
Definitely, definitely. I agree with everything you said,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful way to sort of cap off this section of the podcast. I mean, there's a lot of sort of, uh, if I can call them that, I'll call them bombs because like a lot of good things that you've dropped in here, be it about the conversation of balance, about discomfort and everything. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to transition into the word association game that we talked about earlier before we
Yes.
started recording.
Let's do it.
Um, all right, it's called Bish Bash Bosh, where I give you five different words,
Okay.
which are recurring words that I give to every guest on the podcast, and you basically have to respond to them in three words or three phrases. So, for example, if I was to say balance, what are the three things that come to your mind? That sort of thing. Balance is not the word, but that was just an
Oh, that's not the
example.
word. Oh, okay. Okay.
That's not the word. No.
Okay.
But the first word is differences. What comes to your mind when I say the word differences?
Differences. Rainbow.
Hmm.
Uh, I see people like rainbows. It's just a multitude of different colors as opposed to black and white. Imagine if everybody was the same way. If everybody was brown like us, or if everybody was white, or if everybody was black, it would be such a boring place to live in. I'd like, okay, this is real depression feel right now. But differences, I think, is what helps us grow and cherish and appreciate. Uh, it's it's something for you to create imbalance for. Okay,
Hmm.
it's something
Mm-hmm.
else. And I kind of forgot about this, but the imbalance part, right? There's not always two sides. There's multiple sides always.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's always like janky. But differences is that for me. It's like a rainbow which you have to appreciate every time it shows up to you. So
Hmm. That is beautiful. What are the three things that come to your mind when I say the word nuance?
nuance. Nuance. I don't know.
Anything. What's the word that's
What
sort of in your head right now?
body language,
Hmm.
choice of words, eye contact.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. What is it? What are the three things rather that pop up in your head when I say the word learning?
Learning. Oh, growth, pain, uh, curiosity.
Hmm. Definitely. I agree with all of those three, especially curiosity, because I think it's something that I don't want to say that we lack, but it's something that we're, at least in the society that we grow up in, we sort of channeled in a direction to not seek that curiosity, if that makes
I
sense.
disagree. I think we're
No,
curiosity every second of the way. It's just not the
no,
curiosity you want it to be.
no. Of
Were
course, of
you?
course. What I'm trying to say is that, for example, in school, this is going off in a bit of a tangent, but
It's all good.
for example, in school, a lot of the times, you're sort of, at least back home, you're beaten into shape to do something rather than explore what you want to do.
Yes.
So in that sense, I mean that curiosity is very, or
Linear.
we're being limited to the ability of how curious we can be, so we should
Yeah.
definitely be as curious as you can possibly be. Don't
Exactly.
do stupid shit, but like, discover, experience,
Hey, no,
explore.
you have to do stupid. You, you know,
Fair.
us. it comes back to the balance conversation. You have to know the bad side to know the good side. So you have to be
Fair.
stupid at some point to be a smart person.
Fair.
So be stupid, do stupid shit. Don't do drugs though, but do stupid shit.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. There you go. That's what I meant by stupid.
Uh, I mean, you can indulge, but I don't know. It kind of boils down to that person's addictive or self control situation. But you can dabble. I dabbled. I'm okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But this is not an advertisement for drugs.
Yes,
Anyway, moving on.
please. Disclaimer: don't do drugs.
Disclaimer. Disclaimer. Moving on to the fourth word, empathy. What comes to your mind? What are the three things that come to your mind when I say the word empathy?
Empathy. This is one of my favorite conversations to have as well. This typical definition of empathy is being able to experience whatever it is from another person's perspective. But empathy is actually more than that. Empathy is, let's say I'm talking to this person who's sad about something. I don't know, whatever, like somebody in their family passed or something. So empathy doesn't require you to be in the position of a person whose family member just died and cry with them. That makes two sad people, not one sad person.
Yeah.
You need to understand that perspective. Like, you don't need to be in that position, but you need to be mature and kind of be human to understand that perspective, and then be supportive towards that person. It's not you just like, let me move out of this position, let me stand there and see what you're looking at or what you're feeling, but rather, okay, I see you're standing on a thorn, and I'm sorry that you're in pain, but how can I help you with this pain? Obviously, that question is very lame because person who's sad is like, I want ice cream. They're not gonna say that. Like, I don't know is what they're gonna say, but like just being there as a supportive person and being kind, like being kind doesn't even necessarily mean you have to say anything. You can just hug that person and just say, I'm here
Mm-hmm.
for you, and that would make a world of a difference, as opposed to, let me bring you food or let me whatever. And just, and when you say I'm here for you, actually mean it, and just don't be this blanket statement which everybody makes. uh Anyway, that's all. Like, I also think active listening is a very big part of empathy. Listen not to react, listen for the sake of listening. Just listen and be like, okay, that's like, if you just listen and just said, okay, I understand, like, I'm sorry, that should be enough. As opposed to, I'm listening, but I'm like, our brain automatically goes into this problem solving mode of, okay, how can I help this person? Try not to do that, actually. So empathy there.
Fair. I agree. Last word is sympathy, or not sympathy, rather. Last word is similarities. What comes to your mind when I say the word similarities?
Similarities. I mean, that's similarities is, we're all humans, we're all imperfect.
Yeah.
Uh, we're all doing the best we can. So be kind. If you're gonna be similar to any other person, be similar to a kind person. Don't be similar to
Mm.
a dickhead. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, choose kindness over everything, because just because somebody was rude to you doesn't necessarily mean you need to be rude back. Then it'll be two rude people, not one rude people. So be kind. Maybe you'll influence that person. Don't let them influence you instead. Yeah, being
Beautiful. Beautiful.
being
That's
being hurt is okay. You'll be fine. Kindness will make you okay.
beautiful. Beautiful. That's a great way to close off this segment of Bish Bash Bosh. Thank you so much for your responses.
No
We're going to
problem. Happy
transition
to
into
be
the last
here.
two sort of questions. Huh?
Okay. I said I'm happy to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm glad, I'm grateful that we did as well. But before we leave, two more
Okay.
questions. Well, one's not really a question, but the first question is, how do you relate to people?
How do I relate to people? I don't know. That's a really good question, actually. I'm thinking.
Take
I
your time.
I I 101% of the time I don't judge anybody. I actually am very open minded. So if anything, I want them to be different than me, obviously, right? So I guess I relate to them from the fact that they are different than me or what I've born and brought up in. Because I'm different too, with most people who've been born and brought up here, right? So the difference is what I think I kind of relate to people with. And just I feel like people also go through different phases in their teenage life and early to 20s, and it's like very unique for everybody, and it's kind of exciting to like hear their stories of what their teenage shenanigans, and what kind of kid you were and stuff like that. But yes, there. I don't know if I answered that properly though, but
No, no, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. I was going to be greedy and ask you another question over there in between, based off of what you said.
okay.
You said that you keep an open mind, and I think that's something that's really important for everybody, um, irrespective of where you are or who you are. But unfortunately, like the product of society is that we also have some close-minded people. How do you think someone who's close-minded, of course, from your own perspective, do you think how can they make that switch to being open-minded
I don't think they can.
unless they
It's
want
like,
to?
yeah, like forget about they want to. They need to recognize the fact that they're close-minded first to have this new crusade towards being open-minded. And because they're close-minded, they don't know that they're close-minded. So it's hard unless some serious life experiences which is almost on the borderline traumatic to them. When I say traumatic, doesn't necessarily have to be bad thing. It can also be a good thing, like a guy who's never been out of Oklahoma and grown up pretty conservative. If he, I don't know, started dating this French woman who's like pushing his boundaries all over the place, and if he really loves her or whatever, he might actually start becoming that open-minded person. But I think education is one of the best tools to be open-minded. uh, any master's program you do, I'm not too sure about STEM programs, but a lot of philosophical, sociological programs will force you to kind of bend your brain that way. Like a lot of activism comes from those degrees. I know a lot of people who did sociology and they're like big time activists for Black Lives Matter movement. This Asian hate thing which is happening as well. uh, those are all the kind of conversations and uh, mindset people have with education. So maybe more accessible education, free education. I think America should start doing that. Like, if I think it's a long time coming with the whole crazy capitalistic healthcare and education system which does exist. If it starts becoming more accessible, more affordable, I think there's going to be more people who are open minded. I think there are already significantly big chunk of open minded people already.
Fair, fair point. Well, the last question, or which
Okay.
is not really a question, and you've dropped a lot of these in this episode, but to leave us with one positive thought that you haven't probably given in this episode, what would that be?
Oh yikes! Something I have not said already. Um, all right. I'm obviously gonna say the generic statement of be kind. When I say be kind, always be kind to you first, and then start being kind to others. If you can't be kind to you, then you're failing at kindness. All right. There's something I have not spoken of in this podcast yet is fear-based living is something I kind of talk about. If you're constantly feared about failing at something, there's a good chance you will actually make that happen. Uh, and when you're feeling scared, it can be anything. It can be your career, it can be your girlfriend, boyfriend, it can be your mom, dad, it can be your best friend, it can be you going hungry for the night, whatever that it is scaring you, the perspective you want to actually adopt here is of a weird badass walking into, I don't know, like a playground. You just, as soon as you feel a scaredness, if it's more fuel for you to continue persisting towards your goal. Like you just have to adopt this. Bring it, mother. Let me show you. That's the kind of attitude you have every time you're scared. Don't back away. Always face off, because you can either win or you're gonna lose. When you lose, you learn and you'll still move forward.
And you still win, in a
Yes, you
way.
still win. You still win. When you back away, you're out. You're out. You're not getting anything. So being scared is a good thing. It means you're leveling up. It's like playing video game.
Mhm. Fair. That's a beautiful way to close this off. Bro, thank you so much for joining me, bro. I really appreciate
No,
you taking the time to do this.
no problem.
Uh,
This was a
this
fun
has been great.
conversation.
Everything. It's been quite eye-opening to me as well, in the sense from the concept of balance. Like it's very thought-provoking in that sense. So I appreciate you sharing that
No
and
problem.
everything else that you shared in this episode. So thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Make sure to follow Ram on his social media accounts and mention in the comment section below some of the things that you found interesting, intriguing, or relatable about this conversation. Make sure to also check the description box below for other sources of information and content that we've talked about today. Like this video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit the bell icon to never miss another episode. If you've made it this far, thank you once again for doing so. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to these conversations and foster a community around them. So, until next time, stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know. Random relatability might just be around the corner.